Hi, this is Dr. Ashton Prince, and you are watching the Best Practices Show podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Best Practices Show podcast, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best practices all over the country. And if you're a restorative dentist getting going and trying to connect with patients, you know there's a lot of fears on both sides. You know there's fears that patients have, and you know there's fears that you have. And today I've got a great friend and an unbelievable dentist to talk about those two, the three fears that patients have, and combining them with the three fears that dentists have. You do not want to miss this. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. You're going to love this. Now, a couple show notes. We are shooting this live on Facebook like we always do. And as we're shooting it, I've got the live feed up. If you have questions, I want you to continue to add questions to the feed. I'll ask Ashton while he's on, and we'll get the answers straight from him. Also, keep sending us suggestions for shows and the shares. We love them. We're up over 38,000 followers on Facebook. A lot of you guys, sending suggestions for shows, things that you want to see. So send them to us and we will get them on and give you the right type of information and do it as best we can, because we want you guys to get the most out of us. Also, one last thing. Doctors and dentists watch the show and they share it and they talk about it, but a lot of them share this information with your team. What a great opportunity, because you have people around you that want to get engaged, they want to learn more, and you can share the shows with them and just have a great conversation about how you guys can get better on a regular basis. So don't be afraid to do that. So my guest today has been a good friend of mine. Ashton, you've been a friend of mine for years, and you and I first met at a lecture a long time ago. And then as our friendship has developed, I've watched you not only become a great dentist, great father, great everything, and our path, overlaps at great courses all over the world. And it's so much fun to see this and do this. Now, I know who you are, but if somebody's watching this for the first time, they might not know who you are. So tell us who Dr. Ashton Prince is. Who are you?
Well, I've basically been a leech of yours for a long time, Kirk, so you couldn't get rid of me the whole way through. But my name is Dr. Ashton Prince. I've got a private practice in St. George, Utah. We're about 2 hours away from Las Vegas. I've been in practice now for 12 years, specializing more in restorative care, cosmetics. And I've found that there's a lot more fun to me in communication skills. So I've been doing a lot of lecturing regarding how to interact with patients and how to overcome some of the things that we as dentists experience on a daily basis, and how to try and make life a little bit more predictable, which we'll get into.
Yeah. And that's the thing we all need. Now, being a dentist, Dr. Baird Straub and I were talking about this morning, being a dentist is kind of lonely sometimes. You're trying to figure things out, or an entrepreneur. You don't often have colleagues that you can talk to unless you go to a study club or you're involved in some type of a program. And this topic is really important. So I always love to talk about the why before the how. And so why do you think this is important for any dentist to know about, talk about, learn about?
That's fairly easy. When you start dealing into the whys with things, it has to make sense to you. So as you're getting into conversations and relationships that you have with patients, this is different than just having somebody come in and having that, we call them patients, which is a means to a paycheck. Right. What they really should be is people that we're guiding into relationships that we have. Our job as dentists is to try and improve lives more so than it is anything else. And that's really and true. That's the reason why I got into dentistry in the first place, was to try and find ways to make a difference. Now, granted, there's freedom, and I can set my times the way I want them to be, my schedule however I want it to be, and financially I can do whatever I want to, because it's a very well-paying job. But to me, it was always more of communication, relationships, and making an improvement in other people's lives. So when you're dealing with something like the fears that people have, one of the primary ways to gain trust and to gain an ability to form that relationship is to start calming some of those fears. And as patients, they all have them. As dentists, we have them. We just don't like to acknowledge them.
Yeah. And no one ever tells you about this in dental school that, hey, you're learning how to work on teeth. You come out, you're going to be working on people. And then they do have legitimate fears. And some of them are big ones. And,
True.
there are dentists out there that change lives, and there are dentists that fix teeth. And understanding this stuff will help you move to the one side we always love, which is making a huge impact. So give us some background on this, because I know you've been out there lecturing on this, and tell us how this all came about, and then let's go through each side of it: the fear of the patient and the dentist.
Okay. So initially, the reason that I even started into it was starting to listen to and hear different dentists telling me about the things that they were struggling with. I started looking into some polls as to what percentages of people are actually concerned and have these dental anxieties and fears. And depending on the poll that you're looking at, it can be as high as 20% of patients have at least some minor fear as to what they're getting themselves into, to the point that it's almost debilitating. And if you look into Great Britain, the British Dental Health Foundation, theirs is as high as 36% of people have issues when it comes to stress and anxiety. So if we have people that are coming in and they have this preconceived notion as to what they're going to be experiencing, whether it be from a good way or a bad way, it really helps dictate how the entire procedure goes, how the entire interview goes, how the entire the appointment goes for you.
Yeah, and it does. It really does. Now, when you talk about the three fears of the patients, because you and I were talking about this before we went live, I'm like,
Right.
okay, I think I know what they are. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even guess one of them. Well, actually, I did guess one of them. Take us through them.
I'll bet you I know which one you picked too.
I did, yeah.
So the first one is a fear of the unknown. Okay, so this is a tough one in general. The assumption, and the way that we work in my office, we really don't market out to anybody. Ours is basically all off of referrals, just word of mouth referrals. So if we have a new patient coming in, it's because they've had a conversation with somebody else. So even though they've had that conversation, hopefully it was a good conversation, but it isn't always. But hopefully they've had a good enough conversation where they've talked themselves into coming to our practice in the first place. So they come, and we've had patients that have been standing out in front of the front door, just weeping, just crying for unknown reasons. So when you get them into the office itself, you try and make it as comfortable as you possibly can, whether it be from the smells in the office, the music that's playing. It can be how well they're greeted by the front desk. All of those things are great to try and help bring those fears down a bit, but there's still those unknown issues that are there. So you get them back to the chair and you start having a conversation with them. One of the first things that you do when you're a dentist trying to kind of talk with people is, at least in my views, it's tell me what makes you nervous. I can tell that you're sweating profusely. Your knuckles are white. What's making you nervous? So usually it's things they just don't understand, whether it be the costs of what they're getting themselves into, how long things are going to take, whether or not it's going to hurt in the first place, what options they have, how the procedures are going to go. All these things they don't understand as to what they're getting themselves into. And that can make somebody have a terrible night of sleep before they came in. They might lose a meal just from throwing it up right beforehand because they're so nervous about what might actually go on, but they have no idea what's actually happening.
Right.
So that's fear number one in regards to how things actually go. And there's ways to combat this kind of stuff. First of all, the way that I approach it is I start off with an interview, just strictly conversation, nothing else. Of an interview, not only from me to them, but from them to me as well. So I'll ask them certain questions of what do you expect is going to happen here? Really trying to bring things back to where they start to gain some control of how this visit is actually going to go. Mm-hmm. If they can be a little bit more comfortable and feel like they've got that control that way, then it starts to ease some of that fear that's going on. Yeah. So the questions that we'll ask when it comes to the interview would be, like I said, what do you expect of me, but what do you expect of the office? What do you expect your experience to be like? And then I'll tell them, I want you to go back and forth, and let's find out if this is even the right location for you. If somebody comes in and they say that they want this to be an experience as to where they get everything done, you knock them out, they're sedated out and they move on with life, that's great. I mean, we could make that happen. But there are certain situations that are outside the realm of a cosmetic restoring dentist, whether it be a pediatric patient that we need to send off to a pediatric dentist, or a root canal, an advanced root canal, or a wisdom tooth, something like that. that we have to have them referred out.
Right.
All too often I get someone who says, I do not want to do this again. I do not want to have to go to another office again. Please do not make me go anywhere else.
Yeah.
So then you have to kind of guide them through and educate them as to why specialists are there for a reason. And you have to almost walk them hand in hand through the entire process. Right. And if it's not the right office, if that's what they demand to have, they have to have everything done in one spot, that's fine.
Yeah.
Now, there are offices in town that I have here in Southern Utah where they love to do everything in-house, and that's fantastic for them. That's just not the way that I run my practice. So I want to make sure that they understand what's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the hardest lessons to learn in any business is, the question is the answer. A lot of people are really quick to give answers and talk a lot. I think if you can really pay attention to your team and yourself and the communication distribution in which the patient's talking the most. I mean, even as simple as answering the phone, I completely agree. They don't know why a lot of times they're calling the office. All they know is they may have to go. And why us and why now are two great questions for your team to be engaged in. I know you picked us, but why'd you pick us? And why are you calling now? The tooth broke a month ago. Why is it today? And it's so powerful when you can get that information. And you're right. The unknown scares the heck out of us. So for a lot of different reasons. So why not make the unknown known? Love it. Love it. Love it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ready for part two?
I'm ready, man.
Part two, fear of embarrassment. All too often, I have even had old high school classmates that will refuse to come into my office because I know them well enough that they think I'm going to start judging them. Mm-hmm. And you get people that come through and they have the worst self-esteem that you see.
Right.
There's a number of times in a day for new patients coming through that you will have them actually say, as they sit in the chair, and we've all heard this, of good luck, it's a disaster in there. The esteem level is so low, the confidence level is so low that they're dealing with, that they're already throwing at you, I am a disaster, I am a mess. And they leave it at that, which is really, really sad. And to go through an embarrassment aspect of accepting that's the case, they're not smiling. Those Christmas pictures are this kind of a thing. They're not showing teeth. They're not happy about the way that things are going. And it's really kind of sad. So the judgment of embarrassment is that way. But there's a second aspect to the embarrassment side of things for that fear. It's the financial aspect. Mm-hmm. I could go through an entire process. I could spend an hour visiting with somebody and educating them, showing them what the x-rays are showing them before and after, showing them why this tooth could be fixed and how it could be fixed and all the different options that could go on. I could make sure the patients asked every question they could possibly ask. And when it finally comes down to it and they are fully understanding, at least as far as we believe that they're understanding, getting to that level, then I could come to them and say, all right, this is what we've decided to do. This is what the treatment plan is. You've kind of signed on to it and you're okay with this and you don't have any other questions. The cost on this is going to be $5,000. And you leave it at that. And now, Kirk, I've been to enough of your lectures to know that your happiness thing is to do the big bug eyes and just let them sit there and ponder it. And sometimes that goes really well. Other times it does not go well at all, where they sit there and they start to fidget a little bit. Now, there's an aspect of fear that comes with this that is more based on them wanting to save face as best they possibly can. So they're not going to be telling you, I can't do this. They'll say, yep, not a problem. Let's make that happen. They'll sign whatever forms you want them to sign. They'll take off. You'll never hear from them again. And there's ways to get about that kind of stuff, but they don't want to come across as being incapable of doing something that the two of you both know is something that they really do need to do, that they want to do. But when it comes down to it, they don't want to admit that it's not a feasible situation.
Right. Right. A lot of times you just have to go slow. I mean, and being embarrassed, whether it be about your oral health or financially what it might be able to cost or the investment might be. I mean, what a great opportunity as a dentist to create a safe place where people come in and go, hey, look, I was scared before I came here, but you guys are good people. Wow. And that comes across in your new patient process, just who you guys are a lot. So.
Well, there's enough communication skills that we as dentists, we lack on. I've been shocked to have so many people that will come through my office and say, nobody's ever spent this much time explaining things and discussing things and being on my level and trying to make sure that I was aware as to what was actually happening. What I find really funny is you start to ask offices, and those that I've coached in the past and currently am doing, You ask them who's actually having these conversations, who's trying to calm these fears down. And it's not always the dentist. A lot of the times it's the front office staff. It's the assistants that are coming through that I'm amazed that they'll tell assistants anything. And then when we come walking in the room, they don't tell us anything at all.
They'll tell the assistant more than they tell you.
It's
if you
true.
Set it up.
they know their social security number, birth dates, everything else. But for us, we come walking in and all of a sudden it's this straight face. Good afternoon, doctor. How are you?
Yeah.
And that's about all that you get to start off with. So you've got to break those barriers down as quickly as you possibly can. Otherwise, it's going to be a very awkward visit for both of you.
Yeah. The other thing you keep in mind too, because I love this. This is you're speaking my jam here, because people always say, "Well, we're relationship-based practice," or But when you go in there, you see a lot of transactions, and when you can get everybody thinking like this, hey, look, this is about connecting with people. It isn't necessarily about doing dentistry right away. The question to ask yourself is, are we relational or are we transactional? And sometimes a little bit of self-observation, like this was too transactional, and you can cross the bridge to another side when everybody's trained to ask great questions.
Even in my office, I've got a retirement community that's here close to me. So I started to try and find out how many people are actually embarrassed. At what age do they get to that point? And there was an article written by the University of Michigan that dealt with those from the ages of 50 to 64 as to how many of those people actually had an embarrassing aspect to their teeth at that point in their lives. It's 1/3. One out of every 3 people are embarrassed in some aspect as to what their teeth are like at that point in their lives. Mm-hmm. But if there's that many people that are embarrassed and they're not showing up because they don't want to be judged, we got to change the way that we're actually interacting with these patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's fear number 3?
This is the one that I assume that you probably guessed.
Pain.
Yeah. Fear of pain. Everybody loves it. You wake up in the morning and think, how's the best way that I can actually hurt myself?
Oh, man, I can't wait to get a root canal every day. Now, what's really funny, though, is that, and it's not funny, is I've heard this from so many dentists. Like, one of your favorite things to do as a dentist is hear the drill while you're in the chair and it's coming at you. It just sounds different. It feels different. I've had so many dentists go, man, I've been running that drill for years, but man, when it was coming at me and I was in the chair, it's a whole different sound.
Well, you've got all those aspects of the fear. I mean, it's the fear of the pain of the injection, the anesthesia, of hitting a nerve, pain in the wallets, all that kind of stuff that comes into this kind of stuff. But when you've got a doctor that's coming at you like this, it's always a good time to be terrified out of your mind as to what's going to happen. But people have these preconceived notions that no matter what, I'm walking into a dental chair, in one way, shape, or form, it's going to hurt. There's going to be a pain aspect that's there. So whether that's from previous visits to the dentist, things that they experienced as a kid, things that their siblings are telling them if they're young patients, oh my gosh, you have to go into the dentist. He is going to hurt you. It's going to be terrible. All these things go on to bring about this absolute fear of pain that's somehow always been associated with dentistry.
Right.
Sad.
Yeah. Well, how do we now, when taking a look at that with the patients, now you got the other side of the chair where you have the dentist. So let's speak about that. And in your observation personally and what you see out there, I would completely agree with the 3 biggest fears that dentists have. Take us through it.
Okay. First one, fear of criticism. Now, this is the 3 fears that we go into as dentists. This is something that we've all experienced it at some point. Those that haven't, I mean, they're stone cold. That's fantastic for them. But for those that are trying to form, like you said, Kirk, these relationships with people, you start to have these softened heart situations. So the first one is a fear of criticism. All right. Now, we're expected as dentists to be experts in an area of the body that is a very, very intimate location. I mean, the teeth, the gums, the nerves, the muscles, the face. One of the biggest things that ever actually benefited my practice was the cell phone. Just because of selfies and people doing this constantly, making duck faces and everything else that they're doing, people are so aware of their faces that people are coming in for things constantly. So my concern is if I have a patient coming in, I want to make sure that they are very, very, very well taken care of. And then when they get home, what are they saying about us? Are they happy with the way things? What are they telling their friends? What are they telling potential patients? Like I said, we're a referral-based office. So if they're going home and they're starting to badmouth us right out of the gate, we don't want to be criticized like that. I mean, as dentists, we are supposed to be, like I said, experts. And if we don't come across that way, that's not the way that we want to be viewed. We're, from a patient standpoint, we want to be looked at as, almost on a pedestal. Right. And that's great. But that's just for the patients. How's your team members looking at you? Are you being criticized by your team members? Are they being well taken care of? Are they being validated? Are they happy with where they're working? The last one, your own friends. Are you living your life in a way that's kind of a jerk to them? I mean, if you have to come across the time, and it will happen to all of us, where a patient moves, or you do have to send them off to a specialist or anything like that, the next aspect of criticism that I really don't like, and it does get into my brain a lot, is when they go to a different office, x-rays are going to be taken. Are they criticizing the work that I did? Are they saying that, that margin's off a little? Why did he do this? That color doesn't match.
Right.
That's critiques we don't ever want to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
If they ever do come full circle around to us, when you hear that, it's a blow to the stomach. I mean, you just feel like crap afterwards because you've done your very, very best towards it, and yet you're criticized for it. And it's tough to deal with.
Well, it's tough. I think, just as human beings, we have this innate fear of what other people are thinking. And most of the times you find out, if you do enough investigative homework, nobody's thinking about you at all. Like, we're consumed about what they think. And so part of crossing the bridge, I'll tell you, aging helps too, because the older you get, the less you worry about what other people think, especially if you have some good confidence grounded in, hey, look, we do the right thing here. I've heard Chris Ramsey and other great dentists say, look, once you get your arms around doing the right thing consistently, and you can say to patients confidently, look, just because you don't want to do the right thing doesn't mean I'm going to do the wrong thing here. I've heard that so many different times. And people find different ways to say that. You'll see it calms the criticism thing a little bit. You're still going to get it. And the other thing to remember too, I think you're totally spot on in this. You can't do anything great and not be criticized. You can't. Like, it's impossible. The only people that aren't being criticized are the ones that aren't doing anything, because no one cares even more about them. So I think anytime you stand for something, you make a point, you do something wonderful, you're going to embrace a little bit of criticism. The important thing is just being grounded. Once you know, and you got a group of people around you that are reinforcing your core values and why we do what we do, I think it's okay. But it is definitely a challenge in a lot of businesses, especially dentists, just getting beyond the criticism piece and finding a way to cope. It's not what you
want to hear. At any point, it's not what you want to hear. But you have to be accepting of the fact of you're not going to be able to please everyone. It is just simply not going to happen, no matter what. If you're walking down a store and you start seeing all these people that are walking around, a little bit you've got that almost pride aspect that says, I could be all of your dentists. Everyone here, if you came to me, you would be getting the best service that you could ever get. But at the same time, there are so many people that are out there. It's like, I don't think I could ever handle you.
Yeah.
When those opportunities actually come up, when those situations come up, I should say, you're going to have a few of them where there's going to be a bad review written about you. And it's going to happen. It's not the end of the world by any extent. And it's almost difficult for some people to accept that aspect of criticism. The best way to do it is to know that you did the very best that you could, no matter what else you're doing, and respond appropriately.
Yeah, right. So, and I agree. I like the whole review aspect of things. Now, I would say if you're getting a lot of criticism and very little attaboys, that's something to pay attention to. Or if you're getting a lot of 2.5 or 2-star Google reviews, I would pay attention to a little bit of that. But that's where the help of mentors, I watch so many great dentists. They get involved in the right type of programs, get around the right type of people. And after 20, 30 years, you learn collectively from them. You never want to make these mistakes on your own. But there are a lot of dentists say, like, I dealt with that at one time in my career. I'll just tell you what I did. And these things help you. They help you maintain your sanity and deal with this. I totally agree.
Keep in mind that this kind of stuff that goes on, I mean, these are fears that I'm talking about, even from the patient side, from the doctor's side as well. They can be overcome. There's things that you can do to fix these kind of things.
Right.
These are things that you need to accept the fact of you're not alone by any extent with how this is going on in your practice, and don't be debilitated because of what's actually happening to you.
Yeah, I had a great mentor, Steve Ikamiya. He was a dentist at the Pankey Institute years ago, and this is probably 15 years ago. He said, faith and fear are inversely related. The more fear you have, the less faith you have. And I was like, ooh, that's pretty good. And it's pretty true. The stronger your faith, the less the fear. And so there are sometimes you got to really listen, but criticism is a big... It keeps people from doing things great. That's the important piece to realize. So it's important working through it. Good
Sure.
stuff, brother. Love it. What's fear number two?
Fear number two is a tough one. This is the fear of financial crisis. So it starts from the very beginning. You haven't even graduated from dental school yet.
Right.
And you're already terrified about where am I going to get a job? How much debt am I going to be in? And even I teach a course at a university that's here close to us, that one of the key aspects they want to know is dentistry even an occupation I should get into? Because I've seen the price tag of what school even is. As of right now, the average number of coming out of dental school is $300,000 in debt, just as they're walking out the doors. Okay?
Nationally, is that?
That's your national average.
Holy moly.
Isn't that a shock and a slap in the face? It was 285 2 years ago, but now we're up to 300,000. Congratulations to us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're basing that off of a $300,000 price tag as you're coming out of school and you start to do a payback on it, let's say that you want to do it and pay your student loans off in 10 years. Your average interest rate right now is about 6%, depending on where you're finding things. Your monthly paybacks for that over that 10-year period of time is right around $3,300 a month.
Okay.
Right? So what are people making as they're coming through and getting out? Your average right now for dentistry nationwide, $157,000. That seems really low to me, but that's what I saw as of end of 2018. So for $157,000 coming out of school, you're at about 119, 120,000 is your average there.
Right.
To make it easier, you're looking about $10,000 a month. Mm-hmm. If a third of that is already being taken in student loans, there's a reason to be a little bit nervous for the first little bit, unless you find ways to figure that kind of stuff out. Right. So a financial crisis is not just coming out of school. Like I said, I've been in practice for 12 years. You could be 15, 20 years down the road, and whether or not you've actually set yourself up for a retirement, in the back of your mind thinking, how long am I actually going to have to keep doing this? For some dentists is a thought process that always comes to the back of their mind of, I might have 3 or 4 more years of this. That's about all I can handle. Others 10 years, 15 years, however long it be. Yeah. But if you're not set up for the end game, when it's all said and done, you're kind of in a financial crisis now, that far out of school.
Right, right. And I think this can be said for any great business or entrepreneur. You primarily don't go in it for only making money. It's a great opportunity, but most of the dentists I meet, they love the concept of dentistry. It was a mentor they had, the whole idea of helping people. And then quickly, when you get into it, you're like, man, I have a lot of debt. Now I got to learn how to make money. And the more you deter that or put that on hold and just say, look, I'm just going to, the whole if I build it, they will come thing isn't necessarily a great philosophy in dentistry. Right out of the gate, it's great to have a great counselor as far as debt payment and then the opportunity to start your own practice, whether you find a great coach, a great accountant, great anybody, say, look, cash is to your business what oxygen is to your life. And the great Pete Dawson, who passed away last year, he said this years ago to me. He said, hey, look, making money is not the goal. It's the byproduct, but you still have to learn how to run a business. You can't just, altruistically just work with patients and charge whatever you want and just works. You've got to pay attention to a lot of these things. And it is important. I mean, you've got to make sure that you circumvent the financial crisis. And dentists overall, while those numbers are scary that you presented, it's no different when I got involved. I mean, it was crazy expensive back then. And it was also fee-for-service patients were going to disappear. Well, none of that happened, and then the world was going to disappear when fluoride came onto the scene. So there's a lot of fear that dentists throw into the room that just never really come to fruition. So I think it's a very, very costly profession to get into, but over time, you do it right, it pays dividends in great spades, and you have great work-life balance. So,
like I said, it's the concept of the fear itself. It can very easily be overcome. Right. And I've got a few ways. If you want the notes down, like you
Please.
said, get your pencil and start going through this. Number one, set some goals.
Yeah,
it's not that difficult to start finding out what's most important for you. Now, this is going to get into a little bit more of a concept of trying to find things that are important to you. And if this getting out of debt or whatever it be, you're setting yourself up financially, however it is, those numbers are not designed to try and scare. It's more to educate. Mm-hmm. So as you're getting through something, if you can set a goal, whatever that might be, it could be to buy a practice, it could be to buy a house, to buy some equipment, to set up for your financial future, whatever the goal actually is, shoot towards that and put your resources towards making that actually happen. And if you can start directing yourself that way, that actually helps.
Yeah.
If you reach that goal, that's fantastic. And depending on how you set things up, Kirk, like you said, there's so many different avenues to this. You could be set up your own practice right out of the gate. You could do as an associate. You could work for a corporate office. There's so many different avenues to go about things like this. But as long as you live within the means of the lifestyle that you want to live. Mm-hmm. So wherever your goals actually are, that's fantastic. They're your personal goals. You do with them what you want. But when it comes to something of trying to make things improve or to change a little bit, you have to set those little goals to get to where it is that you want to be. So if you do, this would be number 2 on the list of things. If you do reach that goal, then the next thing to actually go after is making sure that you're maximizing your opportunities. So if you are working for somebody else, max out your 401k every single time or every single chance that you get. So, put towards that, put your deposits into it, let it be where it is. And if you don't want to deal with the 401k, if you don't have that kind of stuff, set up your IRAs, your traditionals or your Roth IRAs, however you want to set that up. Now, in dentistry, in dental school, for me personally, there was no business aspect to the actual courses that I was taking through dental school. I was more concerned about making sure that my margins were good and clear, that I was decay free, that my angles were appropriate, that I understood the materials that I was dealing with. When it came to actually trying to run a financial aspect of my life afterwards, I didn't get a lot of training that way. So you have a lot of people that, this is number 3, if you don't want to deal with it, hire a financial advisor.
Right.
Those financial advisors that are all over the place, they're great. But I'm going to have almost like a part 3A to this is educate yourself. If you want to know what your financial advisor is actually doing for you to keep you out of that financial crisis, some financial advisors are great. They're just like dentists. We like to think we're doing the very, very best we can for people, but sometimes we come up a little short. So if you understand what your financial advisors are doing for you, then that's even better with things. So if you understand even the basics of what I just said, what the difference is between a traditional and a Roth IRA, and educate yourself as to how that kind of stuff works. That's the best way to understand if your finances are healthy. For sure. And there's a number of different books and things that are out there. Personally, Dave Ramsey, he's got a number of books that are out there. One that I read that I thought was great was The Total Money Makeover from Dave Ramsey that I thought was great. And there's another one that I'm going to brutalize her name. And if she ever hears this, I apologize. But it's Teresa Ghilarducci. And I probably just hammered that one. Mm-hmm. But it's How to Retire. How did that one go? How to Retire with Enough Money and How to Know What Enough Money Is. Okay. Along those lines to it. Great book that really just walks you through the entire process to it. And it'll help you to educate yourself as to what you're doing. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. These things are important. Like, I didn't know what a 529 was 18 years ago when my daughter was born, but I had an advisor go, "You're going to start one." I'm like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Okay, as soon as she's born, you're going to get her social security number and you're going to start putting this in there." Well, now she's off to college. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I don't open the envelopes or anything. I just stay away. It's pretty cool. And you put those things on autopilot. But again, without the help of an advisor, I would have just tried to will myself to all this. So I completely agree.
It's more fun to know what's actually happening as well. You can actually see the numbers going up and down. And from being a guy that loved math all through school, mm-hmm. to see the returns that are coming back, see the percentages, starting to play that game back and forth. It's honestly a lot of fun once you actually understand what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
And if you have no idea what any of these things are, you're just sitting back and hoping for the best. And at the end of the day, just like you would in some occupations, I hope I have enough by the end of this month to pay whatever my bills are. And if you're living from paycheck to paycheck, that's a tough life to live, honestly. There's not a lot of happiness that can come from that because you just don't know. You're lacking that predictability.
Agree. What's fear number 3 of dentists?
Fear number 3, this one, it pulls to the heartstrings a little bit, but this is fear of failure, okay? So there's 2 different avenues to this. The first one being a business failure. Now, in truth, you're going to have some good months. You're going to have some bad months. It shouldn't be something that keeps you up at night because it is going to be a little bit more of a roller coaster. Now, to keep yourself out of things like this, and it's one thing I've always loved about your business, Kurt, with ACT, is that you've got these coaches that will guide you through to help make sure that that doesn't happen, that you don't have these failures that go through, because they can walk you through every process, every step to get it systemized to the point that it's you kind of have to work hard to screw it up.
Yeah.
If you've got the right coaches, you have the right advisors. But it's going to happen at times. And there have been a number of times when I first got into practice. Now, the way that it happened for me was that when I graduated from school and I came into this area, this is where I grew up, was in St. George, Utah. And there was a period of time where I knew I wanted to be here because I was in Las Vegas at the time, and I couldn't stand being in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
When my kids were getting to be old enough to start the schools, I thought, I don't want them in schools down here. I want to go home, as to where I grew up. And St. George is my hometown. So we came here, and I found a guy that was needing to have an associate come through, and I agreed with him, and contracts were signed and everything else was finished. And his approach to me was, let's work together for 5 or 6 years. And after those 5 or 6 years, I'll just have you take over the practice. And I thought, perfect. That's exactly where I want to be. 3 months into the process, he comes to me and he says, my health is declining. I've either got to sell this office to you or to somebody else. Do you want it? Holy crap. I didn't sleep well for the first 6 months, a year, somewhere through there, just because I was so nervous of taking over this office and running it right into the ground. And I didn't have a lot of guidance that was going on because he was gone. So I kind of just had to make it up as I was going along, which, I mean, there were some bumps and some bruises along the way, but by the time that you figure out how to actually be a dentist, how to work with this kind of stuff, it becomes a lot easier to do. So that failure, that fear of failure, it happens at times throughout our careers. And it's going to. It's just simply going to. But that ties into the second part. And that's fear of failing with my family. Okay? There are too many times in my past where I have had situations go on where I wanted to make sure that no matter what else happened, I did not fail my family.
Right.
My personal view to it was, if I fail my family, I've failed everything that's important.
Right.
So there was a period of time, and this goes back again into some of your teachings in the past, Kirk, of changing your hours to make them work. So I was always an 8 to 5 guy. My father's an orthodontist. He never worked a Friday. So I learned from that, which is, for me personally, is the greatest thing ever, because I get my Fridays, at least I act like I do. I'm still doing office stuff and emergencies and things come through. It just happens. But I was getting finished with patients at 5 o'clock. And by the time that was finished, administrative stuff goes on 5:30, 6 o'clock, somewhere through there. Then I travel home. I'm home at 6:30 to 7. If my family hasn't already eaten dinner, then I'm with them. And I have a young family. My oldest is 14 right now. My youngest is 6. And within that realm of things that's going on, then they're going to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock, hopefully, somewhere in that realm, which means I get a couple hours at the most. Right. Which to me was not enough at all. I was losing in relationships with my family. I thought, I've got to be more a part of this. I'm not getting to the games. I'm not getting to the recitals. I'm not getting to the tennis matches. I'm not there for my family like I feel I need to be. I was getting to the point where my office was dictating what I got to do, and that bothered me a lot. So it started to switch out, and I heard you give a lecture once of changing your hours from 7 to 3. Thought, that's brilliant. But I'm going to tick off a lot of patients if I do something like that. So I just took one day and I changed it. It was my Thursdays. I changed that to go from 7:30 to about 2:30 or 3 o'clock. That has now become my staff members' favorite day. So we made the change to make every day that way. So now we're every day, Monday through Thursday, from 7 to 3, which means I'm finishing with my administrative things by 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I'm home by 4:30, usually at the latest. And it's not always that late. Yeah. Which means I get to invest time into my family. Now, how do patients respond to this?
Wait, your practice didn't die when you changed your hours? I'm just fascinated.
Shocking, right? I was terrified that it was going to. I thought, nobody's going to even give me the time of day at this point. And granted, there are a number of, we'll call them retirees that are in my area, and that's fine. But there's still a lot of families that come through as well.
For sure.
So in that regard of things, there was a little bit of some pushback to start off with. I mean, there were a few families that were actually verbally upset and confronted me and said, how could you do this to me? And that answer was very, very easy. I explained to them exactly what I just said. I need to be there for my family, because if I'm not there for my family, what is the rest of this even worth? Why am I even here?
Yeah, but wouldn't you agree with this? Dentists often tend to think in terms of exceptions. Whenever they contemplate an hour change, they're thinking of the one or two families or maybe four families this might not work for. And you tell yourself the story that you have a lot of teachers, they can't get here, all that kind of stuff. And it limits you from doing the thing that might be best for you and your family. And once a dentist gets beyond that and makes a decision, you're going to find that those people don't really leave your practice. I've never heard anybody go, man, I changed my hours 7 to 3 and my practice died. That's never happened. And then they often say what you say, like there were a couple of families that weren't thrilled but you know what? A lot of them came back, or most of them came back. And now the premise of why they come to the office during these hours, being a young dentist, like you could have 2 full decades of practice in front of you. Think about that benefit. 14 to 6, that's your kids' ranges. I mean, you've still got some fun years left for all of them. And that time is the new rich, I think. So framing this up, I mean, if you're a young dentist and you're listening to Ashton, you're like, I don't know. I think you should strongly consider, because there's a reason all of us have kids, if you have kids. And usually it has to do with something about spending some time with them. And what a great profession this is. Dentistry is so cool because you can listen to this and say, look, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. Or you can go to anything and say, look, I'm going to practice this way. Nothing stops you from doing it. Only your fears. So
this career can be anything that we want it to be. And that's the beautiful part about something like this is, if you want to change. Make this be what you want it to be. Don't dictate it off of what other people are telling you have to do for them. You said it was just like did you upset a few families? That was the main reason I didn't want to drop a couple of insurances, because I did not want to upset that one person that I saw, that family member, that, I do not want to drop their insurance because I don't want to upset them. But once you actually explain to them as to why this is happening, like you said, everything has to start with the why.
Yeah.
And if it does, and if it makes the most sense to you, then by all means, make it work for you. Don't do it just because other people expect you to.
Amen, brother. Talking my language. So what would be some last thoughts? Any last thoughts you have? Let's say I'm a 32-year-old dentist watching this. What would you say to the 32-year-old dentist who's like, hey, look, there's more than 3 fears. There's like 9 on that one, 9 on this side. What would you say to him?
Well, when you're dealing with these fears, it's really communication based. I mean, you've got to be sensitive. You've got to be understanding. You've got to be able to communicate back and forth. And at 32 years old, which I remember because it wasn't that long ago for me, but at the same time, it's something along those lines where if you can perfect those skills, you can really start to benefit these patients' lives, which is really what I personally believe is what we're doing this for. Yep. So when those hard times come, and they will, there's no question, they will come. Find a mentor, find a friend, find someone that you can actually discuss these things with. Call up Kirk and call up Act Dental and actually have a coach that you can talk these things through. And if you can find someone, call me, in all honesty, whatever you need to do to try and get yourself through these hard times. As soon as you get past the hard times and you get that vision again, that happiness comes back around, you get that excitement back. I mean, you're pumped up, you're ready to go. You can't wait to get into the office. Then what changes? And it's a dynamic that I've heard before and I use a lot, but it changes your O to E. And what I mean by that is it changes the things that you've got to do to the things that you get to do.
Yeah, I love
in a case like this, where you get to dictate how things actually go, you can make it whatever you want it to be. You get to go into work. You get to deal with that patient. And it really does make a mindset change, which at 32, with years and years to go, you might as well enjoy it as you're going along.
Absolutely, buddy. You can't say that enough. And I think every once in a while, we just have to pause and remember how awesome this profession is. Our coach was here last week. And so we had our whole team doing the training. And just strategizing for this course. We've had an incredible run. And so like the challenge is what's ahead. And she said the most powerful thing in the first 2 minutes. She said, we get to be servants in an incredibly noble profession. And I was like, I thought to myself, you had me at hello. You know what I mean? Like, cause, and I've known her for so long and it's just a subtle reminder, like, this is a pretty cool profession. It's a darn cool profession and how noble it is. And a lot of times how we see ourselves in this has a big deal with how happy we are. So buddy, I can't thank you enough, man. Dealing with the fears on both the patient and the doctor, they're huge. Nobody ever talks about them but it's great when we can gain the wisdom from great people like you. So,
Thanks,
brother, thank you so much. Now, stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Best Practices Show. We absolutely love having you on, love this great profession, and we want to hear from you. Things that you'd love to hear more from Ashton, check him out. If you haven't had this guy speak, reach out to him. He is a great thinker and just an overall great guy. And then also keep sending us suggestions for shows that you guys would like to see here in the future. If you enjoyed today, just share with your friends. We love that opportunity to share the good word. And until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.